Israeli strike kills journalist. Some say it was a targeted attack. Very sad.
Five Al Jazeera journalists have been murdered in a targeted Israeli strike. Anas al Sharif, Mohammed Qreiqeh, cameraman Ibrahim Zaher, and Moamen, Aliwa, and assistant Mohammed Noufal were killed. Anas was murdered after a tent for journalists was hit outside the main gate of a hospital. The well-known Al Jazeera correspondent reported extensively from northern Gaza. He was a mere 28 years of age and a key source of news from Gaza City and the north for international audiences ever since Israel's war on the Strip began 22 months ago. Earlier on Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged to allow journalists into the Gaza Strip to cover events there, but stressed that ensuring the safety of media personnel was a key priority. And this was just hours before his army murdered 5 Al Jazeera journalists.
He was one of the most recognizable voices reporting from Gaza since the war began in October 2023. Among the few international journalists who remained in northern Gaza throughout the conflict, broadcasting even as Israeli forces ordered more than 1 million Palestinians to evacuate the area. In December 2023, his father was killed when Israeli forces struck the family home in Jabalia. This came weeks after death threats. Israeli officers told him to stop reporting, but he refused. And in recent weeks, the pressure intensified. The Israeli army targeted him and his colleagues online, falsely accusing al Sharif of being a Hamas member. Al Jazeera strongly denies those claims.
Put it up full mass. 5 Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza dead. Al Jazeera accused Israel of carrying out a targeted assassination after 5 of its journalists were killed in a strike on Gaza Sunday, rejecting outright the IDF's claim, Israeli Defense Force, that one of the reporters was previously a member of Hamas. Broadcaster's well-known Gaza reporter, Anas al Sharif, 28, was killed alongside colleagues Mohammed Qreiqeh, Ibrahim Zaher, Mohammed Noufal, and Moamen Aliwa when their tent near Al Shifa Hospital was hit. The Hamas-run government in Gaza said, quote, brutal and heinous attack was, quote, premeditated and deliberate, describing it as a, quote, full-fledged war crime aimed at silencing the truth, end quote. Al Jazeera slammed the attack as a targeted assassination and yet another blatant and premeditated attack on press freedom. In a statement to Fox News correspondent, the IDF confirmed the strike, but pointed to a spreadsheet release via X last October, listing one of the men, Al Sharif, as a member of Hamas. Yingst added in his reporting that Israel provided no further evidence of the allegations and pointed to a statement released by Al Sharif arguing he, quote, had no political affiliation. The further statement circulated to the press on Sunday. Israeli officials said he only posed as a journalist and served as the head of a terrorist cell in the organization, which was responsible for advancing rocket attacks against Israeli civilians and IDF troops. Isn't it interesting that an entire military, a government, a country, an intelligence agency will point to an X post in order to provide alleged evidence that somebody is a member of a terrorist organization? It sounds like, once again, a prerequisite to the context created for action, this action being a targeted attack. Now, if somebody's a member of something like this, and they happen to be a very public individual, you would have some actual evidence, at least more than just what's on X. There's more. The Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, however, said that Israel had failed to provide sufficient evidence for what it said amounted to a, quote, smear campaign against al Sharif. Quote, this is a pattern we've seen from Israel, not just in the current war, but in the decades preceding, in which typically a journalist will be killed by Israeli forces, and then Israel will say after the fact that they are a terrorist, but provide very little evidence to back up those claims. That's what the CEO, Jody Ginsburg, told the BBC. In July, al Sharif told viewers he lived with, quote, the feeling that I could be bombed and martyred at any moment, end quote, because of his coverage harms Israel and damages their image in the world. At least 186 journalists and media workers have been killed in Gaza since 2023, when Israel banned foreign reporters from entering the territory. Israel shut down Al Jazeera operations in the country last year. Meanwhile, a live Israeli Big Brother broadcast was jolted to a halt on Saturday when a group of anti-war activists stormed the stage to demand an end to the country's military campaign in Gaza. The demonstrators, wearing white t-shirts with, quote, leave Gaza, were members of Standing Together. They are a left-wing organization, a movement opposing the government's approach to the war. Members of the group stormed that stage of Channel 13's hit reality show mid-broadcast, sitting defiantly on the floor as startled hosts and contestants looked on. As the activists began to chant, at one point directly into the camera, security came to remove them. In a statement posted online after the on-air disruption, the group said its members, quote, gave a speech against the government's plan to continue the horrors in Gaza, a plan that will kill the hostages, kill the Palestinians in Gaza, and kill the soldiers. The post concluded with a warning, quote, there is no normalcy alongside this reality, no business as usual. The protest comes as Israeli public opinion on the conflict continues to fracture as the war enters another phase, with the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, promising a new offensive into Gaza City. Other countries are getting involved. Here we go, Australia. Australia now will move to recognize a state of Palestine at the United Nations General Assembly next month, with the condition that terror group Hamas play no role in its future governance. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Australia will work with the international community to recognize this reality, and this is your cause and effect. Now, there are people complaining about the television show being disrupted by protesters. You know, how can it be business as usual when individuals are being bombed and killed, children are being slaughtered? This is one of the most egregious, deadly, and violent massacres. You can't call this a war. Who's at war? The individuals they are killing are not soldiers. They're children. The average age, 19.1. This is a massacre. Foreign policy from America, that's not going to help you now. There's no business as usual anywhere. But here's what is at least somewhat promising. Because of the extreme nature of Benjamin Netanyahu and his attack, soldiers in the Israeli military are speaking out via a letter that said the man has lost his mind and he is slaughtering individuals and this war has to stop. They signed that letter. You have countless citizens in Israel who are protesting Netanyahu in public, visible ways. That's all part of the record. It's simply it's not reported as much as it should be. And now other countries are starting to get involved in order to provide moral clarity in an official capacity at the United Nations. But yet and still, children are dying. All right, dear brother, thoughts here?
My first thought is journalism is not a profession. It's a crusade for the truth. My heart goes out to all of the families of all of the journalists that were murdered recklessly, all of Al Jazeera and everyone else. I do want to say that there's a Geneva Convention. There are rules of law. There are international humanity laws because of this. Journalists are to be protected. Journalism is to be protected. It's a fundamental first right in the United States, which separates us from everyone else because of it. The reason I say this is that this atrocious war that has been continued on Gaza and Palestine is it's not Israeli policy. This is Netanyahu policy. This is, once again, we have another Trump in office who's being extreme in the response, and it's possibly to continue this as long as possible to stay in power. There was a huge vie to remove him from power by the Israeli people, and then October 7th happened. The tragedy of October 7th is something that should never be forgotten. The tragedies of October 8th and beyond are things that also should not be forgotten. This is not the solution. I don't know what the solution is, but this is not it. If you do not believe me, listen to the very generals in Israel who have come out and stated that this is not the way to move forward. Those are military experts and strategists who understand that you are not eradicating Hamas. You are creating another Hamas and worse for the next 100 years plus, because this will never be forgotten or forgiven by the people who watched their family members murdered recklessly and senselessly, release the hostages in this war. Everything, this has gone way too far, and it's gone on far enough, and the rest of the world can no longer sit silent and allow this to happen. This is an atrocity in the modern day.
That's right. And when Netanyahu moved to eliminate reporters from coming into Gaza, from reporting the truth, and basically told them, you must leave if you are here or risk being killed. When he did that and basically got away with it, it eliminated the eyes and the ears necessary to provide the proper narrative to the rest of the world. Now we see more and more of these stories, and the horrible thing, dear brother, is that the part that we see isn't even the whole. All right, we'll continue to update you as the story develops.